right, this is another episode of Masters of Podcasting. I'm Conley.
I'm Melissa.
And today we're going to talk about episode 4, Dirty Jobs.
This episode, all the action out of it kind of flowed out of Bill and Virginia's mutual dissatisfaction for different reasons for the work that they're accomplishing currently. And that we saw directly with Virginia's dream, which really tells us a lot about her expectations for the future, her fears, even kind of how she sees herself within the context of their work together. And from that, there's kind of a domino effect. And we'll get into each of these individually, but her anxiety and refusal to entertain that they're doing anything more than the absolute definition of the work leads to Bill feeling pressured to put the irons to Great House and everything that comes out of that. And that also makes Ginny feel like she needs to work harder on DePaul's behalf and everything that comes out of that. And ultimately, because Virginia doesn't get what she wants at all in this episode, she feels like she has to be independent and work entirely for herself. One reviewer put it really nicely when they said that at the end of this episode, Ginny buys a bigger padlock for her personal bank vault, which I think is a good way of putting it.
Yeah, because honestly, Ginny, up until this point, has had, while she might not have had as much control over her life as she wanted, she at least had agency. She felt like she could act on her own behalf and make choices, and now here she is almost stranded in this go-between where she's not Bill's research assistant, they're doing the sex work in the hotel, and yet she's working for Layin, who obviously has a very limited time span before she succumbs to her cancer. And so I think really Ginny is kind of looking out over the abyss and trying to figure out, where she's going to land.
Yeah, definitely. It was very cute that in the beginning, after she woke up from the nightmare, that Bill was cute in a creepy way, I guess, if you think about it in kind of a Twilight way, him watching her sleep. Like, he puts all his clothes back on, just goes over across the room, opens up a magazine, and watches her sleep. But I think it's kind of unusual that he doesn't just lay in bed.
Honestly, it was more significant to me that he wasn't just laying in bed because, it takes effort, obviously, to, get out of bed and put on your clothes, and then to keep doing what you, I guess, would have been doing anyway, which is to watch that person sleep for an awkwardly long time.
Yeah, I don't know. His observation was cute, and obviously, Bill feels like they've achieved a new level of camaraderie with each other, based on the fact that he kind of makes this cute remark and feels like, we can still be here. I thought you really needed to sleep, which is funny.
Yeah.
Apparently their marathon sex made her pass out, which was amazing. All right. But Virginia lashes back, she kind of hits back at him in a way,
Yeah, she shuts down that whole idea of intimacy pretty quick.
Yeah, which is, I can understand given her fears and what her subconscious is telling her why she reacted the way she did, but shutting that off after having had such a big revealing episode last week, it's as if we take one step forward and two steps back. Which is unfortunate, but I guess that's just the way they're always going to be.
As I was watching this episode, it reminded me really that this is, I would say, one of the few times that they have put the actual work and the progression and the legitimacy of the study over their actual participation in the study. And, when they had their fallout, it wasn't over any part of the study at all necessarily. It was about, Bill's decision to try and give Ginny money and that particular emotional element. But here, I think this is the first time we've actually seen them examining their interpersonal relationship and just going, nope, I can't deal with that right now, and just backing completely away in favor of the science.
So out of that comes Bill pressuring Great House even more to do what he wants and to talk to the board about bringing on Virginia. And it's even more pointed than ever that Barbara, Bill's new secretary, is up at Memorial entirely, I think we're led to believe in this episode, entirely because she is having a sexual relationship with Dr. Greathouse. Greathouse just kind of feels like he can swing his dick however far he wants. Like, he doesn't give a shit. Like, this new guy, he does not really have any respect for Bill, and that is never more true than when they're talking about Greathouse visiting the study.
And I thought it was funny, too. Bill tried to put him off in so many different ways that just ultimately didn't work, and then compounded the problem when Greathouse decided to bring half of Animal House to the exam room.
Bill on his own in the exam room with the different patients, that was a funny moment that he was just kind of like, oh yeah, No, I'm sure Ulysses will warm up here in a second or two. Like, don't worry about it. It's cool.
Well, I like, too, how, obviously he knows that there's a discrepancy when Virginia is not there and when Virginia is there. And so, like, on occasion when that's happened, he's tried to step up and it's gone badly. But at this point, he was just like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't care.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, oh, yeah, my partner normally does that. Okay, have fun.
Okay, I'll be behind this glass.
Like, he wasn't even willing to, like, go down the hall to try to find a hot towel or anything. He was just like, nope, I'm just gonna let that one slide. Sorry.
Too easy, can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. So Greathouse does show up, and he and Bill get into an argument, and he stuffs an egg roll in a guy's mouth and punches out Greathouse, which...
in a thing of beauty.
Yes. And the poor girl in the room beyond. Some people really did pick up on the fact that she kind of looked like Virginia, and maybe that was part of where Bill got his protective instinct over her, throwing the robe over her and closing the blinds. Do we have anything more to say about that?
Honestly, no. I just was mulling over the wording whenever Bill and Greathouse were having that first awkward meeting where Bill is really pushing for Virginia's inclusion and all this kind of thing. And he says, she's essential to the work, she's essential. And then the next go round when Greathouse says, I didn't even bring it up. I don't know. I was just mulling over because that's kind of a special level of contempt you have to have for someone to not even listen to their particular concerns, like to the point where you just don't even, approach the interested party with them. I don't know.
I think it further demonstrates that he is so solely focused on himself, because he's willing to wield his power to keep Barbara somewhere in the hospital, and obviously they've got something going on, but he isn't willing to do that for anyone else. And he's contemptuous of Bill. He kind of looks down his nose at him and is like, don't just be another guy who thinks with his dick, when obviously that's pretty much all he does.
Well, I thought that was funny, too, because, you see him and he's supposed to be like this boys club character, just, machismo and creepiness generally. So I just, I would have expected that kind of person would have been like, oh, well, us boys have to stick together. Not like I expected a whole lot from him. Obviously, he's not a nice man or in any sense of the word, but I thought that was an interesting touch, that there was no connection there between them and not just that professional butting of heads.
Yeah, it was almost like, it kind of telegraphed in a way that Bill was not going to have a long tenure at Memorial at all. Like, there was no deep, interpersonal connection between them.
Yeah, between that and the constant refrain of the board.
Yeah.
When Papa Nicolau comes to visit the hospital and, Lillian and Jenny are there talking up the program and really trying to bend his ear as to the scope of the work that they've done. Then later on, Jenny gets a chance to talk to him alone to recommend Lillian for the Williams Prize. And he says to Jenny, yeah, I didn't even remember who DePaul was. It's just, I think that was pretty galling, honestly.
Yeah, that was really too bad that she has mentioned him in the past. And she was obviously so excited for him to be there. And she was saying to Virginia, we need to do this. We need to have a bunch of these kits ready. He likes tea. Have all this stuff ready for him. This needs to go as smoothly as possible. Like, she's so thrilled that he's visiting, and for him to just kind of shrug his shoulders and be like, okay, well, whatever. And then on top of that, it's compounded when, after Lillian talks to Austin, she goes and gives away the program to this man who does not remember her and who will not remember her. And Jenny is absolutely right when later on when she's arguing with Lillian and she says, you're not even going to be a footnote in this program. He's going to take credit for all of it. And I think that's the one thing that pulls Lillian up short. It's kind of the reality check. Like, I think her expression kind of is like, yeah, that's ultimately true. But she's still willing to, I think her response there by handing it off to someone else is both because she does want the program to go on in, genuine sincerity after she's dead. And she is making decisions based on who she thinks she can trust and who she thinks will propel her, her program to effectiveness. but also she's doing it to spite Ginny.
Yeah, I think you're right. Obviously, she does have a lot of anger at Ginny because, she shared so much with Ginny personally and professionally, and yet Ginny is still not on her side. She's not going to carry the work forward, and she's not being forthcoming about whatever it is that she's having with Bill.
But she really couldn't expect her to come out and say something like that. Like, I don't think saying, "Oh yeah, I cheated on my calculus final in college," like, when has that gambit ever induced someone to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm having an affair with a married man who used to be my boss"? Like, did she think that was a fair trade-off of secrets? And did she think that Ginny was going to say anything? Like, her secrets sucked.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I loved how awkward it was. Like, obviously, you had to give up some kind of secret to get a secret, but it's not the same kind of reciprocity. It's not, I once took a lover and, it was a woman. Instead, it's, I once cheated on a calculus test, which, for Lillian DePaul, slightly a big deal, but nowhere near the scope of, I am having sex with a married man who is also my boss, and we are doing this study together, and things are weird.
Yeah, I mean, Ginny even could have said something like, well, I'm in a, secret relationship with someone that I shouldn't be. Part of anyone's reluctance to say something like that is because, there's always going to be inevitable questions like, well, who is it? What kind of a relation? Like, it's never going to be enough of the secret. Like, it's never going to be enough information. It is too bad that Ginny doesn't feel like she can confide in Lillian, because Lillian is right. She has shared with her a lot more than she probably should have. And Lillian probably is at least partly in the right for feeling, owed a type of sisterhood. They've kind of, I think the expectation for both of them has been that they're both these, women who are fighting against the system, and, here they are treating each other as equals up until this point. They consult each other on matters, and they work so hard, and I don't know if Lillian's expectations are out of proportion.
And see, I don't think they are, because essentially, this is the kind of camaraderie that Virginia very initially was trying to instigate. Oh, Lillian, you should tell me more about your personal life. We shouldn't be rude to each other. It wasn't necessarily let's gab all evening and be soul sisters, and now we're going to fight this fight. But it's, their relationship has transitioned, particularly after Lillian confided in Ginny about her cancer, to the point where I think they should be able to discuss, relationships and personal matters and not just work. So I don't think Lillian is in the wrong for trying to instigate that kind of discussion. She goes about it terribly, but that's just Lillian. She's terribly awkward, so...
Yeah, I think it reveals a lot that Ginny is, wants to have this relationship of equality with someone she very much looks up to, but she's just not willing to go the extra distance to reveal anything about herself to this woman.
And I think that's why I really, as much as Ginny was offended that Lillian would give up her program, that lack of, not camaraderie, because they obviously have camaraderie and friendship, but that refusal
the lack of intimacy.
The lack of intimacy, but I think more so the lack of trust, because obviously, Lillian is having to make key decisions about her work and all sorts of things as she is facing a terminal illness. Even though Dr. Papanikolaou is not going to give her any credit, he's going to take the program with him, he's not going to remember her at all. Lillian, I think, very shrewdly realizes that a legitimate program based out of Miami with a very reputable and renowned doctor is going to have a lot better shot at being adopted, regionally or nationally than would a little startup program headed by Ginny, who has gumption and knows a few people but isn't credentialed.
Yeah, I think Ginny's dream at the start of the episode really applies a hell of a lot more to her situation with Lillian than it does with Bill.
Right.
Ginny doesn't have the backing of a hospital. Ginny doesn't have her name is not on the pap smear test itself. She's at a severe disadvantage. So ultimately the outcome of all of this is that Ginny retreats into herself even further, away from these two people who could both have very big influences on her future and her career, but who have both come up short in actually providing her with anything like that. Bill simply by circumstances beyond his control, and Lillian because she sees a bigger future in someone else, someone other than Ginny, inheriting the program.
And I think too, it's that lack of trust that really twists the knife in Ginny's side, because obviously she feels like she's capable. She feels like she should have control of these things. She should have more control over the direction of her life. And at this point, she is still caught between worlds. She's uncredentialed. She wasn't able to finish her degree, and she's hawking diet pills to sad women on the side.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a dark development for Ginny. She goes this route where she's going to be very self-reliant from now on. But at the same time, she decides to go from. I think ultimately it's a blend of the script and her own improv, because when she says the script, you can hear it in Lizzie Kaplan's voice. It's very stilted. It's very like she's reading off a prompt.
It's wooden, yes.
Yeah, it's wooden. When she improvs a little, it's far more natural, obviously. But I think her big success in talking to the woman in her neighborhood comes from blending the two together.
Yeah, it's, she's able to take those social cues and twist them just enough to make them fit the script.
Yeah, and I think that says something very, very dark about Ginny's character. That she thinks on her feet like that, and she's ready to say whatever. She can be that manipulative and be that good at it.
But see, that made sense because, mostly she has used that power for good. She nudges others gently and with humor and tries to make sure that they do what she wants or that they go a direction that would help her, usually so, she can put her bosses in a better light or herself. But this time we just see her flip that switch and take it all and channel the rage, I guess, and the negativity that she is feeling and just put it out there.
Yeah, so really Ginny is we talked about this before, Ginny is trying to go out and grab herself some agency to get away from being dependent on others to go up the ladder, and it has kind of an evil effect, because essentially what she's doing is, taking control of her own destiny by becoming this great saleswoman of these diet pills, but all she's really doing is getting a bunch of women addicted to self-loathing and speed. So let's talk about Austin for a little bit.
The Lone Wolves Club.
Yeah, Austin is pretty much the only character who doesn't. His actions are shitty, but he's the only character with really good intentions. Like, everyone else has a little injection of, I know I'm doing something wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, everybody else just shows their worst colors, and Austin just continues to be himself. No better, really no worse. He's not sleeping with his sister-in-law anymore, so.
Yeah, definite improvement. 10 points. 10 points to Austin.
He gets the cookie of the week for not being a dick.
His scene with Ginny in the cafeteria, she lied like a champ. She had a story ready to go.
That was impressive, honestly.
That was pretty impressive. To his credit, though, when he goes and talks to Lillian, he, I wasn't sure, but I guess he had his suspicions validated after all, and is refusing to believe Virginia's admittedly, stellar, it was a pretty good lie for what it was. If you go back and think about it and kind of break it down, she made a few slip-ups. She turned herself into the rational person. I thought it was too soon for us to present the study, but Bill just decided to push on ahead, and that was just a terrible idea, and we got into a big fight.
Bill apologized to me, and then everything was fine.
And we're fine now. Everything's fine now. We're doing it my way, kind of thing. Anyone who knows Bill knows that he does not apologize. Even if Ginny has been the person who has been adjusting his bow ties in the study room all this time, he does not apologize. So her story does have some holes in it, but it was a pretty good one. His intentions are good, but he's really the wild card, just injecting shittiness into everyone's days, which he does, absolutely the most with DePaul, especially while she's drunk and has no idea what he's talking about. Not that he would know.
Well, and I just liked how, compared to the smoothness of Ginny's lie, as on the fly as it was, Lillian just really was hanging on oh, so long. Known for forever.
What is it that I know? I have no idea what I know. Austin just shows up and decides to offer some life advice to Bill and compares himself to Bill, which was flooring. because Austin and Bill's situations are not even remotely similar. Austin gets off on, being with, beginning. He's just kind of this serial dater, and whereas Bill, he's cheating, and that's terrible, but he is being monogamous about it, which...
Prize for the best cheater goes to...
Yeah. I mean, it's still terrible, but it's not... I mean, what I'm saying is it's not parallel to Austin's situation. I mean, yes, you can say, well, they're both cheaters. That just paints them with the same brush. I'm not saying one is better or worse than the other. I'm saying there is not as much similarity between them as Austin thinks there is. Like, these are two separate situations.
Yeah, I think it's funny that Austin just assumes that it's like Bill being unhappy with the institution of marriage and just, needing something on the side as opposed to, actually maybe having feelings for someone.
Yeah. For Austin, feelings don't even enter into the equation. Therefore, feelings enter into the equation for absolutely no one. I did like that he compared himself to Hemingway. That was great. Yeah,
that
Austin,
cracked me up.
You look like Papa Hemingway.
Maybe he's writing a book on the side. We don't know.
We don't know what his secret life is like when he hangs out in the hotel with his kids wearing... His kids wear fake pistols like they've been jumping. Like, I just imagine him sitting in his hotel room with his kids, jumping on the bed, eating candy for dinner, watching TV all night. Like, he's just an older brother to them or something.
Yeah, he's definitely the fun parent. Let's talk about Betty and Jean really quickly.
Okay. Did you have, I mean, what did you think of his reveal?
I mean, I was surprised. I was glad that they gave Greg Grunberg something to do other than be sort of jolly and hilarious.
I noticed some reviewers debating whether, not really debating, but kind of considering the difference between Betty's look of disappointment there after he confesses to her, whether her, being upset stemmed more from seeing that she had lied to her husband and that she really kind of didn't need to because he knew the truth about her anyway. And now she's, scuttled his trust in her, because this is an episode all about trust. Or whether she was dismayed because she thought that by putting on this good Christian girl facade, she was somehow going to erase the past, put it all behind her. She was going to, be able to walk past the guys, like the John that she talked to in the hospital hallway, and get away from all that and make a clean break and an escape. And here she's found herself locked in holy matrimony with, one of her Johns from the far past.
And see, I took her expression to mean that she was upset not just at the fact that she can't outrun her past, but at the fact that even with this well-constructed lie, even with a lie that she was kind of happy to live and perpetuate, it still just turned to ashes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was kind of a combination of both. I don't really think it's pinpointed on any one thing. I think it's just kind of this whole thing is not what I thought it was going to be. Here I've been, playing dress up as this nouveau riche wife and doing all of this stuff and going through these motions, and really I could have been honest with him this whole time because he knows who I am anyway. But at the same time, maybe part of it is, disappointment that he didn't reveal to her that he knew all along anyway, because, essentially that's a lie on his part.
Yeah, I think that's also some of it.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say anything?
Especially before we freaking got married.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was actually kind of fascinating because, as we saw in this episode, there's not an immediate outcry for divorce and everything. So I'll be interested to see, especially given some of the previews for the next few episodes, where they take that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I really have anything else to say about Jean and Betty. Do you want to go on to Coral and Libby?
I guess one last thing is I like that whenever Betty comes running up to Bill, she she's desperate, like she is going to be friends with him at all costs. She comes running up and is like, has got a funny story for him, or is trying to cheer him up, or is trying to make his day exciting or something, and he's just glowering at her, and she is willing to stick with it, which... That's funny to me.
Yeah, I did enjoy that, actually. She tries so hard for someone who probably 2 years ago she would have seen and just laughed at.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about Libby and Coral. This was just awful all around.
Really, it was a battle between the very subtle racism and the not-so-subtle hit-you-over-the-head with a hammer type of racism.
Yeah, and I've seen some commenters... mention that they are surprised by this outcome in Libby's story, that they didn't see this coming, that they would not have seen this as a natural progression of Libby from season 1. I mean, part of it is latent racism as a white woman of the 1950s, simply not seeing how very wrong she is to do all of this to another person. You know, and talk about stripping someone of agency, lashing out and trying to control the only thing that she is essentially allowed to have control over. But I can see it. I don't agree with it, of course, but I can see it because Libby had all of her hopes and dreams pinned on this baby, and she was going to be a perfect mother, and everything was just going to be fantastic. And she cannot get a hold on any of this. Not only has Bill not bonded with this baby, this miracle Messiah baby that was come to save her life, it's essentially turned her life upside down, and it's been like she's all her life has done is take an even deeper dive than what she was at last season. So
well, and now
her grasping need to control makes sense, but it is not sympathetic.
And not only is Bill refusing to bond with the baby, not coming around as she dreamed that he would, he's actively siding with this stranger as opposed to siding with her as to the baby's care and what the baby needs and how good either one of them is with the child.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's just... I liked especially that they had her scrambling over the house once the baby developed lice, because you see Bill come home and it's basically like a bomb has been dropped in the house, and it's her running around in an absolute panic trying to get things looking, quote, back to normal, and just not being able to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, and part of it seems to come from the fact that this girl, because she is a girl, she's 18, she's quite a bit younger than Libby is, has so much more life experience. She has a much stronger foundation in how to do all of this, and she has much more common sense than Libby does, having been raised in a privileged, you get the impression that she's been to charm school, finishing school, whatever you want to call it. And she doesn't know the first thing about how to deal with lice. Like, she isn't even aware that this shampoo that Bill mentions even exists, I think. Like, she just does not know how to approach this, which is surprising because that's, I don't know, to me that just seems like common sense.
Right, but I guess I didn't really question it because obviously, Libby, this isn't something that she has had to think about. What if my baby gets lice? Because she's just been living in this fantasy dream world. I will have this miracle baby, and my family will be put back together, and I will be an amazing mother. And so, obviously she neglected all the small details, but particularly the details of when your child gets sick, when things happen to your child that you don't expect or you don't know, why that would happen. So something like lice, which just seems the worst, especially so because it was witnessed by guests, horror upon horrors. I think that really is a blow to Libby's pride.
And you really get the impression that Coral is making a very pointed dig at Libby because she very clearly pronounces it axe in front of the guests, and she looks right at Libby when she does that, because that is the one place where she can get back at Libby. Like, that's the one place where she can have an outlet or have some kind of agency, I guess, because she is successful with the baby. She knows all these little tricks, but it's not like she can show those things off in front of guests, because it's always the kind of thing that should be kept behind closed doors. But here, when she's out in front of other people, she can say, well, yeah, I've had a lot of experience with this, and try and get back at her employer.
And it's very notable too how confident Coral is, I think, not just with the baby but in herself, because she's an employee in the master's house. She doesn't know any of these women who are supposedly Libby's friends, but at the same time she has no problem just talking about her knowledge of the baby and her family life and just interacting with these women. She's just so poised in a very unnatural way, in a not charm school way. She's like Jenny, I think, in that she's very good with people, but it's not something that she had to practice.
Yeah, Coral is on track to... I think that there is a breaking point, and the hair thing might be it.
Oh, I'm waiting to see what happens as far as not necessarily retribution, but just to see if Coral is going to up the ante because of that. because that was just such a dehumanizing moment.
And Libby just does not understand that going and getting your hair done once a week is a big deal, and it takes time and all this other stuff, because she thinks it's just like, oh, well, she'll just go and get a wash-in set, like I do. Like, no, come on. Which, yeah, the 1950s, she wouldn't have any context, but good Lord.
Well, I think, too, Libby, not only does she not realize how inconvenient it is, but she just has no concept that I have done something wrong.
I think she kind of does understand, because the way she handed Coral that $5 bill was furtive and shameful. Like, I think she knows that, she may not know that it's a big deal to go to the beauty shop, but she knows that she has dehumanized her in a way. I kind of got the feeling like she knew inside that she was going to remember this as something bad, but she did not complete the thought at all.
Well, and that's, I guess, what I'm talking about. Sure, she recognized that she did something bad, but I don't think she went full circle and thought, okay, why was it bad? It's one of those things that she's not going to examine too closely, because it's obviously going to reveal something unpleasant about herself that she just doesn't want to deal with.
Yeah, that's probably true. So anyway, that'll be a very interesting turn of events, and that is certainly, for a lot of people, sapped the last bit of goodwill and sympathy out of Libby. All of a sudden, all the sympathy is going, go Ginny and Bill, but Ginny and Bill can't get along. They aren't on the same page, and, screw you, Libby. You're being a real shithead. This season has worked very hard to get us going in that direction.
Although in the very last scene where after Bill wakes up and
which,
Libby
by the way,
phone,
was the greatest thing this show has ever done. God.
The many faces of Michael Sheen being adorable.
So cute. He just can't help it. He just exudes charm. Can't deal with it.
But I was gonna say, I think that's probably the only scene where you actually do feel some sympathy for Libby, because while she is making terrible decisions with regard to Coral, she really is just spiraling and not understanding Bill at all at this point. She has no idea why he is doing the things that he does, and he's not explaining them. And she is fed up.
And she is not surprised when he goes into that panic attack and starts hyperventilating. She just walks over. It's like it's practiced. It's like she's done this before, and she knows what gesture to make and what to do. And it's like she's very, very calmly calling his attention to his pulse, because she just reaches out and puts her hand over his heart like, okay, listen, we can both feel this now. Let's count the heartbeats. Come on, calm down.
Well, and I know you had an interesting theory about that.
Oh, my crackpot theory. Does anyone want to hear this? I'll say it anyway. I am convinced that, and this is just going to out me as an idiot when this doesn't happen, when this doesn't come up anywhere. It would seem, I would not be surprised. It would be reasonable to me if we find out later that Bill has spent time in some kind of like a rest home or not a mental institution like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but like a rest home of some kind, like just, kind of like
a rehab facility.
Yeah, like a facility of some kind where you just go and you spend some time alone, away from your working environment. And I think we got not hints, but like logical bits of information that would lead one toward that conclusion in season 1, specifically when Libby in Catherine, I think it was, says, I couldn't reach him when his father died. He fell apart. And then in the next episode, Brave New World, when Bill is leaving to go to Miami, he says, I haven't been on vacation since, I think it's like 1953 or 1954. This is just after Essie has been in town, and Essie says, well, I've been in mourning for the last 4 years since your father died. I think your father would understand me not wearing black anymore. So I think those things kind of line up. Bill went, quote, on vacation, whatever that means, around the same time that his father died.
I was just going to say, it makes sense with some of the Barton story that we had in episode 1 of this season, and even in the episodes following, because as soon as Ginny comes back to say, yeah, Barton's secretary said he was out of the office, and then I ran into Vivian, and she said he was on vacation, and nobody has their story straight. And then Bill goes immediately to Vivian and says, I don't think you broke your arm playing tennis. I don't think they're on vacation.
Yeah, it sort of fits together in a very vague way, and I don't know if it's leading to anything. I think it would be a bit of a stretch to say, well, this season is going to culminate with Bill landing in a mental hospital for a couple of weeks and Jenny having to run the clinic without him. Like, if it went in that direction, I'd be really surprised. But I think that's...
I just find that a fascinating theory, so...
All right, well, thanks for indulging me. We'll see if it comes true.
But before that, we were talking about Libby and Bill and the panic attack that wasn't.
Her anger just shut off all of a sudden. It wasn't like she, that they spent 5 minutes with her, negotiating and being like, why, stop doing that. Why are you doing that? Like, she just goes into this protective, calm place and takes control. I
think, too, in that scene, one of the reasons that I still managed to dredge up some sympathy for Libby is because a lot of times when you have, I'm not going to say a love triangle on a show because that's not really what this is necessarily. I mean, I guess bare bones, yes, but there's no push and pull as far as, oh, I really love so-and-so and I hate so-and-so. Oh, but I love them. It's beyond that. I think a lot of times the wife in the mix of parties usually is painted as being really silly and stupid and having all these concerns and emotions about, her husband that just aren't true or aren't really founded on any logical circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
So Libby's argument and her anger, I love that they are coming from a completely rational and completely correct place. How dare you get fired from your job? We have a newborn baby that you need to be providing for. I am trying my best. You are going off the rails. What the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah, her concerns are very realistic and very elegantly folded in throughout this episode. This doesn't just jump to her, being the nagging, hysterical type. Like, she has very real and very serious concerns.
Yeah, I think that's really the reason that I actually not only had sympathy for her, but that I enjoyed the construction of that argument. Because, again, most of the time it's just, oh, you crazy wife, you're paranoid, you're so silly, nothing is happening. And here it was just a complete role reversal and Libby being like, seriously, stop leaving me out of major decisions.
Yeah, and that's something that the show handles kind of deftly, balancing back and forth between Libby being just terrible and Libby, actually having a point.
I think it's managed to avoid kind of what I call the Betty Draper trap in her being fundamentally unlikable and just always wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to have a character that, is speaking sense sometimes and very succinctly, and then on the other hand, just doing horribly, horribly dehumanizing things. I think it makes Libby very complex, and I really enjoy the way that they are writing her, even though she's becoming a terrible person.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't admit to that.
Well, I think you can say that you're enjoying the complexity of the character and the balancing act and the difference. I mean, obviously we don't like that she's treating Coral this horrible way, but maybe
right.
She will manage to redeem herself, or not. Maybe redeeming yourself isn't the right way to say it, but that she will go on a different trajectory at some point, because we're not even halfway through the season and Libby is coming off as this horrible person. So I think
she has a chance for a redemption arc.
Logically, this would go into, some kind of reversal, or they may double down. I don't know.
Do we want to talk about Bill going into Buell Green Hospital?
Sure. In the previews for the next episode, we find out that this is the hospital where Libby had the baby.
Oh.
Yeah. Which, I don't know that that's a big plot spoiler or anything, but that's just, yeah. That
what?
Yeah. That makes sense.
I guess it should be obvious, but it's something I really didn't consider. Like,
yeah.
Oh, of course.
So it's funny that Courtney B. Vance, who, legend, had his credit at the very start of the episode, and then like, you're sitting there the whole time waiting for him to show up, waiting, and then it's like the last scene, and he has one line, and you're like, no, Courtney B. Vance, come back, and
no, we miss
be
you.
Wonderful, come on. But that was great. The look on Bill's face when he's the only white doctor in a room full of black doctors, and he says, no, the pleasure is all mine. And it's like, are you getting any fun out of this whatsoever, Bill?
He's gonna try.
So again, in the previews for the next episode, and one of them was a clip. So if you haven't watched this yet, it's kind of a spoiler. Libby talks about how Bill, like, she considers this as a big step down. She's very careful to say, now Buell Green is a very good hospital. I had very good care there. But then she also makes a point of saying, he went from chief of obstetrics at maternity to just being a doctor over at Memorial, and now he's just in this staff position. He doesn't even have a practice now. Like, what's next? Is he going to be the doctor at a penitentiary somewhere? And, like, Libby's concerns are interesting.
Spiraling.
Yeah, she seems to think that he's spiraling well. Like, it's like taking this job is beneath him somehow.
Well, I'm interested to see how they'll play this, because given the previews that we saw, and I think especially I won't say the tension, but the dynamic of the boardroom where Bill is the only white man in the room trying to impress this committee of very statesman-like black men and established doctors. I'm excited to see how that will play out, because Bill's ego tends to take up many rooms. And
yeah, that's true.
I would like to see it knocked down maybe another peg or two.
It was interesting that he has learned a lot about going into an interview and how he presents himself. It's very, very clear and pointed. They come as a package deal now. He has very, very, very much secured their two wagons to each other. I'm not saying that he's tied Ginny onto himself or that he's tied himself onto Ginny. They've just latched onto each other, and they come as a duo. And anybody who doesn't like that isn't worth interviewing with, I think, for him. That was, like, very interesting language, and you get the feeling that, like, he's just going to keep moving until he gets just the right situation. And I wonder how long he will last at Buell Green, considering that there will be, spoiler alert, a time jump, and then they will have, I'm assuming in the intervening time, opened a clinic. Whether it will be at Buell Green or whether it'll be in a different part of town, hell, I don't know.
I was wondering if it was going to be in a different part of town, because I was reading some of the upcoming episode summaries.
Spoiler alert!
If you do not want to hear spoilers, turn back now. But one of the episode summaries was Bill fighting for the inclusion of black study participants and being denied that. And so I'm not really sure how that's going to play out, or in what order necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
If it's going to precede him leaving Buell Green for, his own clinic, or whether he, is trying to get this done through Buell Green and they don't want to risk their reputation on an interracial study when they're having enough trouble integrating the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think it's going to be that last one.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see how some of that will play out, and I'm very excited to see them tackling race issues in the 50s and 60s. That's going to be dynamite.
That I really hope that they pull that off, because I think there's pressure on them, given that they are a prestige show set at around the same time as Mad Men, considering that Mad Men did not do that to very many people's satisfaction.
But I think they've already set themselves up in a better place, because they don't just have a couple of black characters that they're preparing to draw from. They're clearly getting ready to bring on a new ensemble, and I think that will hopefully round out the cast very nicely.
Hopefully, yes. I want the show to do well and to succeed and to tackle many issues. Do we have anything else to talk about? This is kind of a short episode. This was sort of an in-betweener one.
Yeah, I think this is, like I said earlier, it's basically laying bricks for the foundation of probably episode 11 and 12.
Probably.
If we're lucky.
Probably. All right, you want to close us out?
As always, you've been listening to Masters of Podcasting. And if you want to drop us a line on Tumblr, you have any questions, anything you want us to address in the next show, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, thanks for listening.
Bye.